So yesterday we had discussed about the pharmacology of the histamines and certain properties of the antihistamines, and it is necessary to know the pharmacokinetic properties of the H1 receptor antihistaminics, because these are the very commonly used agents in case of veterinary as well as the human practice is concerned. So the conventional H1 antihistaminics are very well absorbed from oral and parenteral routes and metabolized in the liver and excreted in the urine, just like the all other 90% of the drugs which follow the same principles. So they are absorbed orally. Then whenever you have given them subcutaneously or intramuscularly, they are absorbed very properly, then metabolized in the liver and excreted in urine, and they are widely distributed in the body and also enter the brain. The first generation only enter the brain, earlier agents, whereas the recent generations are not entering the brains. The new compounds penetrate brain poorly, accounting for their low or absent sedating action. So whenever we consume the antihistamines for the rhinitis or sore throat or many more things, we should not drive because it causes the drowsiness by inhibiting the 5-HT receptor in the brain. That's why the newer compounds are always prescribed, just like cetirizine, levocetirizine, etc. And the duration of action of the most of the agents is 4 to 6 hours, except meclozine, chlorpheniramine, then the mesalazine, loratadine, cetirizine, and fexofenadine. All these act for 12 to 24 hours. So meaning of this is, if you take the earlier agents and administer them to the animal, they will act up to 4 to 6 hours. That means 1/4 of a day. Whereas the recent generation agents, they act 12 to 24 hours. That means the repeated dose need to be administered twice in a day or once in a day. That's enough. Whereas the earlier agents, they need to be administered twice a day or thrice a day, depending upon the situation. And side effects of the antihistamines and the toxicity are like, the important side effect is the sedation and diminished alertness and concentration loss and diminished concentration. And there will be lightheadedness and there will be incoordination. Many times if you consume the antihistamines, it will cause fatigue and tendency to fall asleep are the most common side effects. So the objective testing shows impairment of psychomotor performance. That means whenever the person who consumes the CPM, etc., it is very difficult for him to walk. That's the psychomotor performance. And patient should be cautioned not to operate motor vehicles. That's very, very important suggestion, or any machinery requiring constant attention. Suppose if he is a person working in the machinery or using the machinery or driving, which requires continuous constant attention, and it should not be administered to such persons. Or else the vice versa is, if the persons have consumed the antihistaminics, the class 1 or the earlier antihistaminics, should not drive. The alcohol synergistics in producing these effects do other CNS depressants. Yeah, alcohols do also have the activity just like the depression. CNS depression activity, it will act in synergy to that of the alcohol. So they should not use such thing. And few individuals become restless, nervous, and are unable to sleep. That's also another that's unexpected problem. And second generation compounds are largely free of the CNS effect, just like cetirizine, levocetirizine, and many more agents. And apart from this side effects, they have also got the side effect of dryness of the mouth and epigastric pain, memory loss, especially in case of the children. Continuous use of the antihistamines will cause dryness of the mouth and pain, as epigastric pain, and loss of memory in case of the children. That means amnesia, temporary loss of memory, not the permanent loss. Then the overdose produces central excitation, then tremors, hallucinations, muscular incoordination, then flushing, hypotension, fever, and some other features of belladonna poisoning, similar to that of the belladonna poisoning. It is going to cause certain clinical signs like the stiffness of the muscles and some incoordination. And the death may be due to the overdose of the antihistamine is caused by respiratory and cardiovascular failure, as in the heart the receptors there, the histaminergic receptors are there and going to collapse the heart. And histamine release receptor, as you very well know, they are all classified as H1, H2, H3, and H4. The binding to of these receptors stimulate them to produce the functional response, whereas released in response to certain stimuli, and they bind to various types of the receptors. So whenever an antihistamine is consumed, it will circulate in the entire body, then will bind with all the types of receptors, H1, H2, H3, and H4. Of course, H1 and H2 receptors are widely expressed, whereas the others are not so widely expressed. That's it, very well understood. And here you can see the additions of the, one second. So here you can see the histamines are released from the mast cells, and the inflammatory cell migration will occur due to H1 and H2 and H4 type of the receptor. Usually the immunomodulation takes place. Just a minute. Yes. Then the immunomodulation will take place through H4 type of the receptors are concerned. H4 type of the receptors are concerned. Okay. Then apart from this one, the platelet aggregation will occur to H1 type of the receptor. There will be increased heart rate and cardiac output will be seen, whereas the bronchoconstriction is a common problem which is mediated due to H1 receptors. The gastric acid secretion is increased due to H2 receptor agonistic action, and also the neurotransmission occurred by the H3 type of the receptors, whereas the chemotaxis of different molecules will occur due to the H4 type of the receptors. And already they have mentioned that where these histamine 1, histamine 2, 3 and 4 type of the receptors are found, it's found on the smooth muscles, located on the parietal cells, found on especially the H1 found on the smooth muscles, then H2 parietal cells, especially gastric parietal cells, and H3 on the central nervous system, especially H4 on basophils and bone marrow. So accordingly, it plays the chemotactic action. And as usually, we have already seen the classification of these antihistamines are like most sedative, moderately sedative, less sedative, and mainly anti-allergic. Just like the most sedative agents are diphenhydramine, dimenhydrate, hydroxyzine, and promethazine are the agents which have got a lot of sedation, whereas the agents like phenyramine, meclizine, buclizine, cyproheptadine, and cetirizine, these are moderately or less sedative agents. Whereas the dimethadone, clemastine, then CPM, all these are somewhat less sedative among the generation 1 agents, whereas the generation 2 agents are merely anti-allergic and very less sedatives like levocetirizine, loratadine, and many agents are like the flunarizine and cynarizine are anti-migraine agents and anti-vertigo agents. So, the antihistamines are the drugs used to block the activity of the histamines by preventing the ability of histamine to bind with that of the histaminergic receptors. The traditional antihistamines are used to treat allergy, block H1 receptors, where H2 antagonists inhibit gastric acid secretion to help to treat peptic ulcers, which is already we are told about all those things. And the H4 receptor is the receptor which is found, and it's a potential target for treating allergic and anti-inflammatory conditions such as asthma and allergic rhinitis. So, the allergic rhinitis and asthma are very well treated by the H4 receptor antagonists. And the ability of H3 receptor to modulate the various neurotransmitters make this receptor a novel therapeutic target in the relief of symptoms caused by several conditions, including movement disorders, obesity, schizophrenia, abnormal sleep and wake patients, etc., and many more. And already this, please remember the classification, at least the minimum 1, 2, 3, or 4, highly sedative. Already we have dealt with this thing, dimenhydramine and promethazine, hydroxyzine. Whereas the moderately sedative, phenyramine, cyproheptadine, meclizine, and cynarizine. Whereas the mild sedative, chlorpheniramine, dexchlorpheniramine, etc. And second generation agents are the agents which do not have any sedation agent. The classical example is levocetirizine, whereas the fexofenadine and cetirizine, etc., are also one of the important examples of this category. And the highly sedative agents, the dose of these agents ranges from 25 to 50 milligram, almost in the same range, diphenhydramine, dimethadamine, and promethazine, and many other drugs. So these can be administered as oral, and promethazine can be administered as IM also. So the availability is the injection and also the oral tablets. So you can see here the Benadryl is available is as the what you call as anti-allergic drug as the tablets of 25 milligram, and it's a classical antihistamine which is causing sedation, whereas the promethazine or many other preparations with the different trade names are also available as the drugs to treat the respiratory problems. And dimenhydrinate tablets are also available, and hydroxyzine, etc. They are all available on the medical shops. So, mechanism of action of the dimenhydrin, it competitively inhibits the histamine H1 type of the receptor, thereby alleviating the symptoms caused by endogenous histamine on bronchial, capillary, and gastrointestinal smooth muscles, though they are indicated in varieties of the conditions like temporary relief of the various allergic conditions and to treat prevention or prevent motion sickness, vertigo, and reaction to blood plasma in varieties of the patient. And And another mechanism of action is they prevent the histamine-induced bronchoconstriction, vasodilatation, increased capillary permeability, and muscle spasms. Then GI obstruction or also tinnitus are the contraindicated for these agents. Of course, they should not be consumed with the alcohol, CNS depressants, and the MIO inhibitors, and also. So usually these are all not so indicated in case of the pregnancy, except few agents. So usually these agents will cross the blood placental barrier, and also sometimes the blood-brain barrier, and cause CNS drowsiness or dizziness, and varieties of the actions we have already studied. They should not be consumed along with the alcohol or any other CNS depressant drugs, because they are going to suppress the central nervous system with concurrent use. And elimination is mostly excreted in case of the very promptly they are excreted through urine only. That's one of the important way how these agents leave the body. Of course, the example of the moderately the sedative agent is the phenyramine maleate. Dose is 20 to 50 milligram, and the 0.3 milligram per kg, usually dose 6 to 8 hourly, and the route is intramuscular or oral and available as 25-50 milligram tablet, and injections 22.5 milligram per ml injection. So Avil is one of the most popular trade name, which is containing phenyramine maleate, which is a very classical antihistamine and sedative antihistamine and anti-allergic drug. So here you can see that it's also available in ampoules and vials and also tablets. Very popular brand. So the antihistamines always they will compete with that of the H1 receptors, like this chlorpheniramine maleate, then the many other chlorpheniramine maleate and phenyramine maleates are available as injections in ampoules and vials, and also the varieties of tablet. And coming to the second generation antihistamines, the second generation antihistamines, or they are also known as SGAS, may be defined as those H1 receptor blockers marketed after 1980, which have one or more of the following properties. So these agents derived recently, and these agents do not have the CNS depressant property, and higher H1 activity, no anticholinergic side effects, because all the side effects of the anticholinergic agent is absent in second generation or recent generation antihistamines. So additional anti-allergic mechanism apart from H1 receptor blockage is also seen, because some also inhibit the late phase allergic reaction by acting on the leukotrienes or by antiplatelet activating factor. So they are very, very potent anti-allergic drugs, because they also block the leukotrienes and on the antiplatelet activating factor. So as per an international consultants group of experts, no compound developed so far merits labeling as third generation antihistamines, means very exclusively used for allergy. Such drugs are also not evolved, because the second generation compounds do have little anticholinergic action, and the newer drugs have advantage of not impairing psychomotor performance, especially during the driving, etc. You can take one person's can take and will not cause any drowsiness and produce no subjective effects, no sleepiness, do not potentiate alcohol or benzodiazepine abuse. So these can be safely taken. But the principal indications of these second generation agents are especially the allergic rhinitis and conjunctivitis. Suppose the person is having running nose and also conjunctivitis, And also the hay fever, which is caused due to allergy, pollinosis, especially allergy to pollen grains, and control, especially it will be helpful in case of controlling sneezing, runny but not blocked nose, and red, watering, itchy eyes can also be treated with these agents. And apart from this one, there is the indication is urticaria, means generalized itching, and dermographism, means whenever the graft of the derm skin is done, then it is used. And atopic eczema. The atopic means the specific reason is not exactly found. Acute allergic reaction to drugs and foods can also be treated with second generation antihistamine. So they have poor antipruritic action, anti-emetic and antitussive action because they are not acting on the central nervous system. And the one of the important agent is fexofenadine. It is the active metabolite of terfenadine, the first non-sedating antihistamine, and was withdrawn because it includes the polymorphic ventricular tachycardia or polymorphic ventricular PVT, or it also causes the syndrome known as Torsades de Pointers, Torsades de Pointers syndrome. That's the polymorphic ventricular tachycardia, fexofenadine. So it is withdrawn from the market. And second generation antihistaminics may be once again they also inhibit the late phase of allergic reaction by the leukotrienes and antiplatelet activating factor effects also, and all these are advantageous. And the example of these agents are the loratadine, which is a long-acting selective peripheral H1 antagonist which lacks CNS depressant effects and is fast acting, and no cardiac arrhythmia is seen in case of the loratadine administration, no interaction with macrolides or antifungals as with that of the other antihistamines. And the efficacy is very, very good and has been reported in urticaria and atopic dermatitis. And another thing is, another drug is desloratadine. So loratadine is a congener of loratadine and it's the major active metabolite of the loratadine and effective at half the dose of the loratadine. So the dose can be reduced to a minimal extent. And cetirizine, which is very commonly prescribed by many of the doctors for the patients with the allergic reactions, or it is a metabolite of hydroxyzine with marked affinity for peripheral H1 receptor and penetrates blood-brain barrier poorly but having very mild sedation and subjective somnolence is experienced by many recipients. As sometimes it crosses the blood-brain barrier and causes the CNS depression. It is not metabolized but does not prolong the cardiac action potential or produce arrhythmias. And the levocetirizine, it is the active or enantiomer of the cetirizine. So levocetirizine is also one of the most commonly prescribed antihistamine. That's the second generation antihistamine. So it is effective half the dose and appears to produce less sedation when compared to the other agents or the class 1 antihistaminic agents. And the levocetirizine is available as tablets, syrup, and many other preparations. And one of the important agent which is recently prescribed by the doctors or physicians very commonly is agilastine. So this newer antihistamine or H1 blocker has good topical activity. See, that's also very, very important. In addition to inhibits the histamine release and the inflammatory reaction triggered by leukotrienes and platelet activating factor. After intranasal application, it has been shown to downregulate the intracellular adhesion molecule 1 and expression of the nasal mucosa. So this agilastine is one of the recently used agent to treat the rhinitis and given by nasal spray for seasonal and perennial allergic rhinitis, which provides the quick symptomatic relief within, and it's also long acting 12 hours. If you spray the nose with the agelastin spray, then at least 12 hours it is going to act. Stinging in the nose and altered taste perception are the local side effect. Yes, the drugs which have got an effect will have definitely some side effect. Yes, and some somnolence has been reported on nasal application and a tendency to weight gain is noted after oral use, but only after prolonged use. This weight gain property is concerned because many times the consumption of the food may also be increased. And megelastin, this non-sedating antihistamine, is effective in allergic rhinitis, urticaria by single daily dosing and the T half of 8 to 10 hours and no active metabolite. Directly it's going to act, megelastin. Avastin is another new second generation antihistamine that rapidly gets converted to the active metabolite, that's the carbastin, having T half of 10 to 16 hours. And it is one of the non-sedating and active nasal and skin allergies. So many times these animal studies have found to prolong QT interval, which makes it liable to anti-arrhythmogenic potential. So usually such drugs should not be administered to the patients who do have the history of the cardiac problem. And rupatidine, it is recently introduced antihistamine as additional platelet activating factor activity or antagonistic property and is indicated in allergic rhinitis. So all these fexofenadine and cetirizine, these are all available as the tablets, loratadine and levocetirizine. These are all available as tablets and very commonly prescribed tablets for the rhinitis and urticaria, etc., which are the symptoms of the allergy, especially which are induced by IgE type of the antibodies. And the clinical use of the antihistamines. So, to name one of the important use is allergic disorders, maybe many type of the allergic disorders, the dust allergy, dust mite allergy, or the contact allergy with a plant or insect bites, and many more. And prurititis, that's the itching induced by certain agents, especially the Urtica dioica, etc. And if you touch that particular plant, you will get a lot of irritation. Then such case should be treated with the antihistamine. And motion sickness, of course, it's promethazine, then Phenergan, of course, and Stemetil, prochlormethazine, mesylate. So they are all very commonly used in the motion sickness. And also the vertigo means the balancelessness that can also be treated with antihistamines. And many times this is used in the as antihistamines before the pre-anesthetic medication. And the cough can be inhibited by the antihistamines. Of course, it's one of the drugs to be used in Parkinsonism symptoms, not a major drug, but one of the drug. And acute muscle dystonia occurring due to many type of the diseases, this drug can be used. It is a sedative, hypnotic, and anxiolytic. Also, especially the class 1 or the first generation antihistaminics are very commonly used. And allergic disorders, many type of the allergic disorders, the antihistamines do not suppress antigen antibody reaction, but block the effects of released antihistamine that are, it's only palliative therapy, means it is not going to have any reaction with antigen antibody complex and activation of the immunological phenomenon, but it is going to block the H1 receptor, and they effectively control certain immediate type of the allergies like itching, urticaria, seasonal hay fever, allergic conjunctivitis, and angioedema of the lips, eyelids, etc. So you may be knowing that whenever a honeybee bites or any call as drum or the urticaria is there, then there will be swelling of the eyelids and allergy of the serum, or whenever the blood transfusion is there, then eyelids will be swollen to the greater extent, and at that time the antihistaminics are very, very useful. And new agents like cetirizine have adjacent role in the seasonal asthma. And pruritus means pruritus. Many conventional antihistaminics have antipruritic action independent of H1 antagonism. And a few of the older antihistaminics like the CPM means chlorpheniramine maleate, diphenhydramine, cyproheptadine, first choice drugs for idiopathic pruritus. Still, they maintain their own integrity for the treatment of varieties of the disorders, especially the older antihistamines. Old is always gold. And in case of common cold, many of us suffer from common cold, which is a very common disorder, or maybe due to the viral infection or bacterial infection. And antihistaminics do not affect the course of the illness, but may afford symptomatic relief by anticholinergic and sedative actions. The newer non-sedating antihistamines are less effective for this purpose, especially the common cold, because common cold is not so commonly controlled by the non-sedating antihistamines, whereas the allergy and other reactions very promptly convert. They are treated. And another property is the promethazine is treated is a drug of choice for the treatment of the motion sickness, and also the diphenhydramine, dimenhydrate, and meclizine have prophylactic value in milder types of the motion sickness. So motion sickness is a very, very common problem, and the persons affected with motion sickness will need to take the tablet before they start traveling, or else they will be very much upset during the entire pilgrim or the tour. And promethazine can also be used in morning sickness. So morning sickness means whenever any person gets early in the morning, then he will feel he may have certain vomition and sometimes the abdominal cramps, etc. And they also, promethazine is used for drug-induced and post-operative vomiting, and also the radiation sickness means the radiation allergies are radiation after radiation therapy (RT), especially in case of cancers. The vomition, severe vomition will be induced, which is centrally induced, and hence the motion sickness, the promethazine is very commonly used after the post-operative vomiting and also radiation sickness. Then antihistaminics are of ineffective in bronchial asthma. The reasons may be leukotrienes, and which is through C4 and D4, LDC4 and LTD4, and platelet activating factors are more important mediators than the histamine. And the concentrations of the histamine attained at the site may not be sufficient to block high concentration of histamine release locally by the bronchiole, because this is also another important phenomena, because the antihistamines, the concentration of antihistamines at the site, it may not be sufficient to block high concentration of histamine release locally in the bronchi. So they are there because this thing, the antihistamines are ineffective in bronchial asthma. And vertigo means the dizziness or imbalance. And for this, cinnarizine is the classical H1 antihistamine having additional anticholinergic benefit like 5-hydroxytryptamine, the sedative and the vasodilator properties, which has been widely used in case of the vertigo. So It modulates calcium flexus and attenuates vasoconstrictor action of the many endogenous mediators. The beneficial effect have been reported in Meniere's disease. Yesterday we have seen that's the especially the tingling effect in the inner ear and loss of balance and other type of the vertigo. And dimenhydrite is another effective anti-vertigo antihistamine. Dimenhydrite. A variety of the approaches have been tried and have met with only partial success. And there are very characteristic drugs. Of course, they are commonly prescribed for the treatment of vertigo. And the number one is the labyrinthine suppressants, and they suppress the end organ receptors or inhibit central cholinergic pathway in the vestibular nuclei, especially in the brain. And antihistaminics like cinnarizine, dimenhydrine, and so many diphenhydramine, promethazine. All these agents are used for the treatment of vertigo. So the anti-emetic property like prochlorperazine mesylate, it's known as the trade name is Pemetil, and ethylperazine, diethylperazine, and also the vasodilators. They improve blood flow to the labyrinth and brainstem, like the beta histamine, then nicotinic acid. All these are the vasodilators. And few of the diuretics can also be used in the treatment of vertigo, and they decrease labyrinthine fluid pressure. The examples is acetazolamide and thiazide, and also the loop diuretic furosemide. This can also be used. And few of the drugs, especially the anxiolytics and antidepressants. And these drugs appear to modify the sensation of the vertigo. And the characteristic classical examples are the diazepam and amitriptyline. So these are all the anti-anxiety agents, and amitriptyline is an antidepressant agent. And the other agents that can be used for the treatment of the vertigo is corticosteroids. So they suppress the intralabyrinthine edema due to the viral infection or any other diseases. So a moderate or mild dose can be administered with corticosteroids, and the vertigo can be effectively controlled. Here you can see that how the antihistamines are going to act in sneezing, especially the rhinitis. Usually the allergens are coming, and they are presented to antigen presenting cells, also the T cells. And T cells release the antibodies, IgE antibodies, and on the mast cell, this is a mast cell on which the antibodies are going, and they contain a lot of the antihistamine and the histamines, and later they are going to be released. So whenever the allergen has entered the body, it will make the cells to secrete thousands of quanta of antihistamines and histamines. So they are going to join the blood vessels and going to act on the histaminergic type of the receptors. And later they flow through the blood and act wherever they are there. Then the antihistamines, they come and block the receptors, especially the histaminergic type of the receptors, and cause the effect, side effect, especially the required effect. And coming to the H2 antagonists, the first H2 blocker is the burimamide, was developed by the scientist Black in 1972. The metimid was the next, but both were not found suitable for the clinical use. Cimetidine was introduced in 1977 and gained wide usage, but withdrawn from the market because the cimetidine causes gynecomastia and releases estrogen in case of the men. Hence, it is withdrawn from the market. And ranitidine, famotidine, roxatidine, and many others have been added subsequently as the agents to inhibit the gastric hydrochloric acid secretion. And the H3 receptor antagonists are somehow seldom they are used. There is through a selective H3 antagonist. That's the one of the example to remember is thiopyramide has been produced and it has not found any clinical utility. Still, it is in the experimental stage because it need to act on the brain and cause the anti-allergic actions. Of course, centrally mediated allergies or any other reactions. And of course, the mechanism of action of H2 antagonists are competitive antagonists of histamines at the parietal cells and H2 receptors. And they suppress the normal secretion of acid by parietal cells and the meal stimulated secretion of the acid. So after, usually what happens is whenever the acid usually it is secreted after the meal, means the stretching up of the receptors in the stomach causes lot of acid to secrete. This is known as the after meal acidity. And they accomplished by these two mechanisms, histamine released by enterochromaffin cells, ECL, in the stomach is blocked from binding on the parietal cell H2 receptors because the H2 receptors are being occupied with the antihistamines and later the acid secretion stimulation will be inhibited. Therefore, other substances that promote the acid secretion such as gastrin and acetylcholine have a reduced effect on parietal cells when H2 receptors are blocked. So further secretion of the acid is effectively blocked by multiple mechanisms, especially by after the drug acts on the H2 receptors. Here you can see that the stomach or the fundus and the parietal cells of the gastric, it is magnified here and it is containing the H2 type of the receptors. H2 type of the receptors and the antihistamines will act on the H2 type of the receptor and the activity of the cyclic AMP is inhibited, which in turn will not allow the proton pump or as hydrogen potassium ATPase pump and the acid secretion will be reduced. Whereas the acetylcholine and gastrin, they do have the relation with that of the histamine and the cimetidine, famotidine, nizatidine and ranitidine. These are the agents which act on H2 receptor and decrease the gastric acid as hydrochloric acid production to a greater extent. The gastrin is released from the enterochromaffin cells and G cells. Gastrin is released from the G cells, whereas the enterochromaffin cells, they do release histamine to a greater extent, especially in the stomach. Usually the H2 antagonists are going to act on the specific H2 receptors and also they reduce the effect of the gastrin and acetylcholine in the gastric parietal cells, whereas the ATP is converted to cyclic AMP, whereas the potassium will come inside and the hydrogen is extruded out, which is the activity of the proton pump, and that will be inhibited by H2 receptor antagonists indirectly, not directly. They are not going to act on the proton pumps, but they reduce the secretion property of the acid to the greater extent, because here you can see that the proton pump inhibitors like pantoprazole, omeprazole, rabeprazole and many newer agents, they are directly acting on the proton pump, which is opened by many of these type of the receptor, maybe gastrin, acetylcholine, H2 receptors, and of course the muscarinic type of the receptors. Of course, the adrenergic system is not having much action on the stomach is concerned, and indirectly it plays some role, and ultimately the acid production is decreased. So we will have a question here even though the proton pump inhibitors, they are very specific agents on the proton pump, or they are going to inhibit the hydrogen potassium ATPase pump, and very, very potent agents to decrease the gastric acid secretion. And still that the ranitidine and other H2 receptor antagonists are in the market. So what may be the reason? Still, the H2 receptor antagonists, the older drugs, are there in the market, even though very specific H2 receptor, these proton pump inhibitors are there, which are very, very specific and drastically reduce the secretion of the gastric acid. So this is somehow a tricky question, because many times the cost factor and everything are the same, but sometimes you might have heard the term known as the nocturnal acidity. Nocturnal means when the person is sleeping, the acid secretion occurs. That will be inhibited by H2 receptor antagonists. Whereas the proton pump inhibitors are maybe they are little bit less potential for such use. And the clinical use of the H2 antagonists are used by the clinician in the treatment of acid-related gastrointestinal conditions and peptic ulcer diseases. That's the PUD. And gastroesophageal reflux disease is a very common clinical sign nowadays. It is also abbreviated as GERD or GORD. Esophagus, either esophagus or O can also be used for gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD. So the dyspepsia is the another condition in which the these H2 receptor antagonists can also be used. And prevention of stress ulcers. Yes, stress causes the ulcers, a severe punched out ulcers, and the exact mechanism is production of the corticosteroids, and there is a specific pathway for this. And the specific indications of such type of the ulcers is by the use of the what you call as H2 receptor antagonists, and prevention of stress ulcers, especially stress induced. In case of rats, the stress ulcers are induced in such a way that whenever the agents are used, the ulcers which are induced by the swimming stress or the any other stress, especially ligation ulcers, they are also reduced to the greater extent, because the rat model, we will make them to swim continuously in the water, and because of this stress they develop the gastric ulcers. And later we will try the different drugs for this action is concerned. And adverse effects of H2 antagonists are in general where they are well tolerated except for cimetidine, because it causes cimetidine causes gynecomastia, and all others drugs do not have much side effects. And infrequent adverse drug reactions include the hypotension, and rare ADRs include the headache, tiredness, dizziness, the confusion, diarrhea. Many times the diarrhea will be seen, and constipation and rash. In addition, gynecomastia may be seen in fewer in case of men, especially the cimetidine is withdrawn from the market because of the gynecomastia in men. So, and apart from this one, the cimetidine might also cause the loss of libido and impotence in male, which are reversible upon discontinuation. Of course, irreversible loss of the libido and other things are caused by the cimetidine. So because of all these side effects, it has been withdrawn from the market. So we have to answer the question that the antihistamine withdrawn from the market for the gynecomastia effect is cimetidine. And coming to the H3 receptor antagonists, of course, they are studied somehow to the better extent in 1983 and finally cloned in 1999. And the H3 is the what you call as the attractive drug target for potential treatment of central nervous system diseases due to its role in modulating variety of the CNS function. So H3 receptors are expressed predominantly in the presynaptic terminals of the CNS neurons where they function as inhibitory auto-hetero or heteroreceptors. So especially all the H3 are located on central nervous system. Usually H1 on many of the smooth muscles, H2 in case of gastric parietal cells, and H3 in the central nervous system. So H3 antagonists, what you call it, therefore function to increase the release of various neurotransmitters, including the histamines, acetylcholine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine, and have potential utility in addressing a variety of the CNS disorders, including deficits in the wakefulness and attention deficit hyperactivity disorders, dementia, schizophrenia, and obesity, centrally induced obesity. All these things can be treated with H3 receptor antagonists. And one of the classical example to remember is thiopyramide. Thiopyramide is the classical example of the antihistamines, and these both compounds have H3 antagonists but poor drug-like properties, and it also has got little H4 antagonist, and it inhibits the histamine-induced actin polymerization and calcium metabolism, and the upregulation of the addition of CD4 molecule, CD11B molecule. So they are degraded by histamine N-methyltransferase, just like catechol N-methyltransferase, and then the poor of target selectivity, and also the CYP450 inhibition and poor blood-brain barrier penetration is also one of the activity of these agents. Hence, so even though the receptors are present on the H3 receptors are present in the brain, if the drug is unable to penetrate the CNS, then it will be of no use. Hence, the H3 receptor antagonists are not a popular therapeutic regimen for any of the disorders. But of course, the research is in progress how to utilize these H3 and H4 receptors to find the pharmacological target is the present area of research, and in future we will see there may be development of very specific agents which can target the anti at the H3 receptors or H4 receptors. So it has got a very bright future apart from the earlier agents which are acting on the H1 type of the receptors. So the new drug targets are being every day they are evaluated, maybe for the H3 receptor antagonism. Then another agent is ciprofloxacin. Ciprofloxacin, this compound has the H3 antagonist but poor drug-like property. It's not a very good what you call as target for H3 receptor, and they are degraded by the HNMT or histamine N what you call as methyltransferase, and poor of target selectivity. Once again, the CYP450 inhibition and lower blood-brain barrier penetration is there with that of these particular agents. And that's about the histamine and antihistamines. So to summarize all these things in a few words is the histamines are the attacoids, means they are the local hormones produced from the mast cells on action with that of the IgE type of the antibodies, then with the stimulation of any type of the antigens, then they release lot of histamine from the mast cells and causes severe allergic reactions. So the receptors are H1 to H4, whereas the H1, H2, H3 receptors are little bit, especially H1 and H2 are very important receptors, whereas the H3 and H4 are of course under recent research. So H1 receptor antagonists are very specific anti-allergic drugs, whereas the H2 type of the receptors are anti-acid in nature. So